So tell us the story of how Dead Reckoning came to be.
Well, I'll tell you the the origin story, and that is I had released a record on Atlantic after them spending, I don't know, upwards of $250,000 on videos and all sorts of things. I was unceremoniously dropped from the label, which is often the case. There's a lot of ceremony when you get signed to a label. It's a lot of popcorn and we're all in this, we're one big family kind of things. But not so much when it's time to say goodbye. And I actually found out that I was dropped from the label from people on the street. Friends would ask me, commiserate with me about having been dropped from the label. And I was like, what? And so finally I called up Rick Blackburn, who was the guy that signed me to Atlantic, and said, well, Rick, I've been hearing that I'm not on the label anymore. And he said, yeah, I've been meaning to call you. And that was that. And I never heard from them again. I never got a statement of any kind from Atlantic Records, ever. Signed the deal, they gave me my money, I went home, they spent a fortune, and then said goodbye. So, that being said, I had booked a tour of Norway, and I think we played in the UK with Tammy Rogers and Harry Stinson. And we had finished the night at the Cruise Cafe in Oslo, Norway. And a guy came up to me, whose name I can't recall, and he asked me if I had a new record coming out. And I said, no, I didn't. I wasn't on a label anymore and wasn't really expecting to be on a label. And he said, well, that's too bad, because he had imported my last record. So he was probably the only guy that actually sold it. To the best of my knowledge. And I said, oh, that's wonderful. And he said, yeah, if you had a new record, I would import it. And I said, okay, how many records would you import? And he said, I'd import 1,000 of them. And I said, how much money would you pay for those records? And he said he would pay $8 a copy and would pay for the shipping. And I was like, $8,000? I could make a record. I said, I will make you a record. And I came back to the States and got together with Harry, again, Harry Stinson, and Kevin Welch, who was also sort of in between record labels. And we popped open a bottle of John Powers Irish whiskey at my kitchen table. And I proceeded to try and convince these guys that we should start a record company and that this isn't really all that hard. And having seen the people and new people that were running the labels and watched the decisions that were being made, I thought, well, this doesn't take any particular genius, and convinced them that we could do this. And we did.
Who was Dead Reckoning, and how did they end up being the co-conspirators on the label?
Well, the co-conspirators on the label, as I said, started with Kevin and Harry and myself, and there were two other people that we were very close to and who we thought would fit whatever the profile was, who were not making records, one of whom had been on a major label, and that was Mike Henderson, and the other was Tammy Rogers. And so it was basically the five of us that were the official owners, co-owners of the company. And the idea was we would put our records out.
And what about Dead Reckoners as a band?
Well, that was another thing. One of the things that we were able to accomplish was that since everybody on the label was an active musician, that we were able to play on one another's records. And that kept the costs down to a minimum. And I don't know that in all of my years, aside from the very first record that I made, I don't know that I've ever spent more than 3 days making an album. I mean, done. And uh, and with the Reckoners, that was totally conceivable. I mean, these people were bulletproof, and we were all of the same mind. We were all trying to achieve the same goals. We were not trying to create some Music Row hit record to rival Garth Brooks or something like that. It was just, well, we're just going to make records. We're going to make the music that we want to make, and that'll be that. Where it goes and how we develop it, we'll see. It sort of slowly gathered steam, and there was so much support. It was overwhelming. I mean, really, from the Nashville community was really surprising how people were sort of rooting for us to succeed. It was all pretty remarkable, actually.